The Quebec government is putting a freeze on bringing in new temporary foreign workers who hold low-wage jobs in the Montreal area. Premier François Legault announced the 6-month pause as a first step to encourage Ottawa to cut back on the number of temporary immigrants, putting pressure on health services, he says, education, housing in the province.
I think we have to show the example because we're putting a lot of pressure since almost a year on Justin Trudeau to reduce the 420,000 temporary immigrants controlled by the federal government. Few times Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Miller said, but what about your programs? We take action today, so I hope they won't use this argument anymore and finally make a move to reduce the number of immigrants.
The federal government has approved Quebec's proposal, saying it's considering changes to the program across the country. Is that the smart political move? Let's bring in the Tuesday Power panel. Michelle Cadario is a former Liberal National Campaign Director. Françoise Boivin is a former NDP MP. And here with me in studio, Kate Harrison is a Conservative political analyst. Welcome, everybody. Françoise, I want to start with you, and I'd like to get your analysis of whether this is like a substantial and meaningful policy move or whether this bucket is mostly filled with politics. We heard a bit of the federal back and forth in that clip from Premier Legault.
Since I'm doing Mordu Politique from Monday to Thursday
on Radio Canada,
exactly, and I think this topic has been one of our topics for the last 2-3 years solidly, pretty much on average once or twice a week. So when you ask me, is it a solid policy? I don't think so. I was kind of looking at the end and listening to the announcement and going, you're claiming, Premier Legault, that you're going to slow down, remove 3,500 temporary foreign workers when in another paragraph, you say we've got over 300,000 in the last few years. You have to read the fine print. I mean, the policy's not out yet. Not only that, it will touch students. I think in Quebec, we often mix up the concept of who's temporary, the students, the workers that you've been going around the world with all type of delegations, government of Quebec, to try to lure into my province. On one hand, you want them. On the other hand, you say, hey, we want to freeze it. And you read the fine prints. I mean, it's just going to be for Montreal, for the temporary foreign workers. And it's going to be temporary measure. And not only that, you read the exceptions. I was trying to see who was not touched by the exceptions, like education,
healthcare,
construction, agriculture, so on and so forth. So I felt like it was a legislation that was aimed maybe at the McDonald's, Burger King of this world. Other than that, so I think it's a lot of trying to look and cater to what the public wants or think that they want, and to be an answer to the Parti Québécois, who's very stern on the idea and wants no more foreign people in the province, and they want to cater to their electorate. It just sounded very weird as a press conference.
Michelle, I mean, there is no question that there is some politics going on between the federal government and Quebec because, of course, Quebec is looking for a bigger cut in the number of non-permanent immigrants that it receives. And there's been this back and forth with Ottawa, who's going to make the first move because of the control they have over their immigration system. But let's just kind of park that for a minute, Michelle. What I'm interested in asking you about is this program itself nationally. I mean, it isn't just François Legault. Certainly, Pierre Poilievre has been critical of the program, but economists like Mike Moffat as well have said, listen, the numbers have shot up too high, and this is, if you look at the statistics, this low-wage temporary foreign worker program is taking jobs away from Canadian youth, right? The 15 to 19 and 20 to 24 bracket, those numbers are lower than they've been in a long time. How dramatically does the federal government need to act, in your opinion, on the temporary foreign worker program?
Well, I think we've got to acknowledge that they actually have made an announcement about acting. They have acknowledged that they want to scale it back. But it's also dual pressures. And for all of the exceptions that Premier Legault made today on healthcare, on construction, on agriculture. That's why we are bringing so many people into the country, because we don't have the workers to be able to do it. And, I think that, the youth unemployment program, if it was actually aligned to being able to take these jobs in the service industry, then that would be fantastic. But I don't know that it's an even swap. We saw post-COVID just how, every restaurant it seemed that you would go into once it opened up again had no service. And I think that places right across the country, including like rural Ontario, where I am right now, are still struggling to find workers. There are way more jobs and looking for people to fill them. And, the reality is, for them to stay in business, they have to turn over tables, they have to sell food. And that means that they need people to be able to do that work. And so, if there was an easy way that, there were Canadians that would do it, that would be a cheaper, Canadians are a cheaper way to go, because you're not having to pay for any other kind of costs of bringing them in and all of the paperwork. I suspect that the majority of companies would love to have that option, but I think that where we're facing in the labor market today is just not quite that simple. And so trying to align all of that while meeting the very real demand of the answering the public in terms of the pressure that's being put on infrastructure, on housing, on the schools, on the healthcare system. Every province, every government, every federal party is feeling that pressure, because no solution is going to be easy.
Pierre Poilievre has been pretty clear in his criticisms of the immigration system, literally accusing the Liberals of breaking it. He has been less clear about his intention to lower immigration levels. He said he would tie them to housing starts and other things like that. It's widely understood that would mean that they would go down, but I remember one interview in particular where he was sort of being needled about whether that meant lowering them, and he wouldn't be that explicit. So my question to you is, given those economic pressures Michelle was just talking about, groups like the Canadian Federation of Independent Business coming out today and saying, this program is really valuable, we value it. How can the Conservatives sort of juggle these dual pressures as they walk towards laying out a vision here?
Yeah, I think the important thing to understand is the kind of persistent unemployment that we face. Unemployment is still higher this year over last year, relatively unchanged.
Extraordinarily,
relatively unchanged from just last month. You mentioned the youth unemployment numbers at a 10-year high. I do not think that this is necessarily a worker problem. It may be a wage problem. And I think the current TFW system has a number of employers that I think have grown over-reliant on that are not willing to look at their wage practices, their benefits practices. And I think that we're overdue for a conversation on how the labor market and Canadian employers need to keep pace with what others are doing rather than rely on these systems. I think the other thing that's tricky about this federally is, to Francois's point, this has been an issue for years now, and we are only seeing Minister Boisseneau come out and talk about this in the last couple of weeks. Meanwhile, it was Sean Fraser who was setting the targets year over year for record high immigration, and now is very surprised when our housing and provincial infrastructure can't keep up. So this is the consequence of building an economy on the backs of consumers and on immigration rather than supporting industry. And the federal government cannot claim that they are surprised by this, because they are the masters of this policy.
Okay, François, I'd like to bring you into the discussion in terms of the politics of this going forward. There are, you look at students, for instance, international students, as well as the many aspects of the temporary foreign workers program, and the government has acknowledged that, okay, we need to rein this in. We need to start making some changes. How much can the Liberals reasonably expect to sort of get political control of this issue when they themselves have pointed to numerous areas where things aren't working like they'd like them to be?
That might be a bit hard, and even harder with my province, because Quebec has control over a lot of the aspect that they decry towards the federal government in virtue of an agreement that was signed, I think, in the 1990s. So they control a lot of aspect on this. That's why Premier Legault was talking about introducing legislation in September to top the amount of the numbers of students, foreign students, that could come in the college system and universities and so on. And for some of these universities and colleges, it's kind of their, en français on dit une vache à lait. It's kind of their,
Cash
that's
cow.
how they
Yeah.
survive.
Yeah.
Cash cow, exactly. That's how they survive because of these foreign students. So there's a lot of negotiations happening between the high rank officials of colleges, of universities, and the Minister of Immigration in Quebec. And then you have the federal taking certain decisions and authorizing, and it's so confusing. I was talking to some people once, and they're like talking to me about something, and I'm like, but you're not talking about foreign students, you're talking about refugees. Or another one enters another concept, and they bring everything into this. I think it's been a long time coming, but I know that they discuss at every level, but they need to come up with a plan that everybody can follow and be more about policy than about politics, because it's very easy, I find, to slide in the wrong direction when you touch immigration, immigrants, people who work very hard, who are doing all the jobs. Look at who comes and deliver different things at your houses, people, and you will recognize that often it is temporary workers because nobody else is taking those jobs. So there's so many things that are mixed up, but they need to be coherent in their policies, and I didn't find the federal doing a good job on that front based on some of the argument that Kate made earlier.